Okay, I think we're live. How do I check? Okay, hello everyone. Gosh, I forgot how strange it is to do these. You're completely talking to a screen, but there could be lots of people there, who knows? All right, I think it's all working. Hello, I'm Louisa Deasey. I am hoping that, the notifications went out to the people who RSVP'd to this event. Just a super short and quick video for you all, because I know that at this time of year, everyone's sort of reflecting on what they've accomplished in 2020. For many of us, it's just surviving. And what you want to accomplish in 2021. And for so many people, writing a book is a huge goal. So I wanted to share with you something that you really need to have in place if you're going to accomplish this goal in 2021. And don't worry, it's not a painful thing, it's not an unenjoyable thing, and it's not difficult either. But first of all, if you're new to me, if this is the first of my videos that you've seen, I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Louisa Deasey. I am an author. I've written 2 memoirs, both published traditionally, and before this I worked as a freelance journalist, an editor, a copywriter, and a freelance writer for various publications online and print throughout the world. I edited magazines, I worked as a freelance journalist in the health and psychology field. I just really love nonfiction. So moving towards writing a book was the next step for me. I always wanted to have a book published. So my first book was published in 2010. And that was a travel memoir, Love and Other U-Turns. And then my second book was published 2 years ago from Scribe, and that was a memoir, and a biography memoir hybrid of discovering my late father's life in France after a woman in Paris contacted me. So the reason I wanted to share with you today, the one thing that you need to have in place before you can write your book in 2021, is because I've learnt this the hard way. And it's before I share with you this one thing that you need to have in place, I'm going to share with you as well 3 things that you need to drop if you want to get your book written. Now, these are all things that I learnt through studying, writing and editing at RMIT, through pitching articles, through always having a book up there on the next of my dream list. You know, after I'd been published for a number of years in magazines and newspapers, it was really the next logical step for me to have a book published. I really wanted to get a book published. But I just didn't know where to start. So, and back then when I was just starting out, the internet did exist, but it was nowhere near as comprehensive as it is now. You couldn't just Google trainings or, PDF outlines for books. You couldn't Google, a structural blueprint for a book proposal or anything like that. So it was very much learning through just trying different things. Okay, so when I'll share with you the one thing that you need to have in place after these 3 things that you need to drop. So forgive me if I need to refer to my notes, but it's been about 9 months since I did a live video and there's no second takes with these. Okay, so the first thing that you need to stop doing is thinking that you need to write perfectly the first time. I see this a lot with people who do my memoir courses and people that I talk to who are writing books, and I did this myself. It's this whole concept that we as adults have that's very difficult to fail and do something terribly. You know, when you're professional, when you've perhaps succeeded at one element of your life, it's very difficult to go back to the beginning and be really terrible at something. And I'm sorry to say, but you're going to have to write a terrible first draft. You're going to have to fail and work through, your various chapters that don't work out before it can be perfect. No one writes a book in one fell swoop and then never has to rewrite it or do any changes. So you need to get over that idea that you're going to be writing this book. You know, you're going to start on Monday and you're going to finish in 2 months and it'll be great. You're going to need to fail. You're going to need to write some terrible stuff. And you're not going to want to know you're not going to know what you're doing. You learn by doing. You won't learn what the book is even about until you start writing it, really. So it's impossible to get it perfect the first time. So the other thing within that of expecting yourself to write a book perfectly the first time is that all comes from this idea that other people are going to read it. And it sounds paradoxical, but you need to drop that idea. You need to completely forget about the outside world when you are working on the first draft of your book, and the second draft and the third. I recently spoke to a very, very lovely friend who has been published actually, but in a different genre. And through the pandemic, her city was in a little bit of lockdown, not as bad as here in Melbourne, but she was at home for 3 months and unable to work. So in that space, she really, really wanted to just try her hand at writing a fiction, because she really wanted to think about a particular time in history and a particular country, because we can't travel at the moment. And so she just sort of submerged herself in writing this terrible first draft, but she did it because she wanted to be in that headspace and thinking about and imagining and creating, you know, things based on this time and place. And I think that's a really, really beautiful way to approach your book, is just as an experiment and something that you're doing for your own creative flow and expansion. And so, no surprise at all, she finished that first draft. She has this amazing 90,000 word manuscript now that she's going to go back and look at and send out to some beta readers. So amazing. But, you know, she is under no impressions that that draft is fantastic, that, you know, a publisher's going to snap it up first time. And it's not even about that for her. She was writing it more as a personal creative developmental experiment, which is where I think the best writing comes from. So you need to write for yourself first. So stop thinking that it has to be perfect. Stop thinking about outside readers and editors and what other people are going to think of your writing, and write for yourself first. Write about something that pulls you out of bed, that makes you want to submerge yourself in that creative story. So that's the first thing that you need to drop, is thinking that it has to be perfect and thinking about your readers. The second thing that you need to stop doing, and I will get to the number one thing that you do need to do when I finish this 3 list, is thinking that you have to have it all mapped out. And look, I'm all for outlines. And when I was working as a freelance journalist, I used to do, you know, just make a bullet point list of the points that I wanted to cover in an article before I sat down to write it. But that was about as far as it got for me with outlining. You're not going to know, you know, sometimes, and the funny thing is with A Letter from Paris, I didn't even know the midpoint reversal until I started writing it. So you can outline for sure, and you need to outline, particularly with a book, because it's a lot bigger than an article or an essay. It's 80 to 100,000 words versus 1,000. You will definitely outline it, but you won't know exactly where the turning point is going to be in every chapter. You won't know, you know, if you write 5,000 words for this chapter, that chapter will be done. It's creative. Things are going to mesh and change and flow. So rather than thinking that you have to have it all figured out from the beginning, just write for the pure enjoyment of it. When I first went to, I applied to get into RMIT, which is in Melbourne. It's professional writing and editing school that you had to go through this strict application process and be approved. At the time, it was very hard to get into, and I really wanted to get into it because I thought that's how I'm going to start my writing career. And I had heard from people who had got through to that course that they looked upon you favourably if you could show them that you had a novel in progress. And I didn't. I just finished 3 years at doing another university degree in literature, and I'd only ever written essays before. But I was determined. I really, really wanted to get into RMIT. So I just sat down and I thought, oh my God, how do you write a novel? And I tried to outline it. As I said, this is 1999, so there weren't any, outline documents or PDFs on the internet for me to follow. And I wrote maybe a couple of chapters, which was the longest I'd ever written at that time. I think it was 6,000 or 8,000 words. And I submitted that as part of my application. Did that ever turn into a novel? No, I had no idea how to even outline a novel. And it was fiction as well, which I'd never really written. So you need to drop that. And the other thing is that was so unenjoyable for me. It was so much pressure thinking that I had to know exactly what the story arc looked like, what the beginning, the middle, and the end would flow, what exactly went into a novel that would sell to a publisher. I wasn't going to know that then and there. I hadn't even started my course at that point. So it was really, really very stressful and unenjoyable, and I didn't really want to write a novel after that because it was so unenjoyable. Because of the pressure that I put on myself. So this ties into number one, which was, stop writing for other people and thinking about your audience. And so number two is stop thinking that you have to have it all mapped out with a very, very, step-by-step outline. And this can be very challenging to people who like to have things organized, because the creative process is, by its very nature, very disorganized. You might come up with the genius part that sews up one part of your storyline or a chapter, when you've just woken up or you're out for a walk. Often you don't come up with those sort of creative problem-solving aspects when you're sitting at the computer trying to pump out the words. So that's the second step, is stop thinking that you have to have it all mapped out. And the final thing, and this is kind of the most important thing, and it's ties into the others, is stop thinking, if you want to write your book in 2021 and you've never gotten further than 1,000 or 10,000 words, stop thinking of it as a book. Stop sitting down and writing a book. You're not writing a book. You need to just write. So it's a bit like, I use the metaphor of I'm going to go and run a marathon, rather than I'm going to start jogging and see if I like jogging. I'm going to maybe run a 5K and see if I enjoy that. If you set out for your first run to run a marathon, you'll injure yourself. You'll get discouraged. You won't be fit enough. You won't know, what's involved. And the risk of injury or worse is so much greater. And it's like that if you sit down, you open up your laptop because it's holidays soon, you go, yeah, I've got 3 weeks, I'm going to write a novel, or I'm going to write my book, my memoir. And it doesn't work like that. You need to have some material to play with. You need to have an idea that you really want to stretch out. It's all about being playful and creative and not having this intense pressure on yourself to produce a novel in a certain amount of time and for it all to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, that's a great failure on your part. The whole creative process is trying and testing and learning and growing. And the whole part of that is you can't grow if you're already there from the beginning. So stop thinking of it as a book when you sit down to write. So this leads into what you absolutely must have in place before you can consider that you might write your book in 2021. And this is to make it enjoyable. This is to make it a creative growth process enjoyable, is to have a daily writing practice in place. And for me, because the genre that I write in, that is memoir journaling. So writing every day. And I thought I'll show you an example just to give you an idea. When I sat down, both of my memoirs, Love and Other U-Turns and A Letter from Paris, started with material that was in my journals, and material that I'd emailed or written as letters to friends during my travels, because we write differently when we're writing in our journals and when we're writing, to friends that we know very well. We're not thinking about an audience. We're just being intimate and open, and that allows all the really golden stuff to flow through. So I really, really recommend having a daily writing practice. before you even think about writing a book, because first of all, that's going to provide you with material to use. So you're not going to sit down and go, oh my God, how do I write 100,000 words? If you have 3 Spirax notebooks, for example, which is what I have used for a long time, and they're all full of handwritten journal entries, just the psychological aspect of that is you already think and know that you have written material to use to start from. And it's also going to help you when you are outlining, and no, you don't need to have the whole thing figured out, but when you're outlining, you can go back through your journals and go, oh, that would be a really good place. That's definitely the inciting incident there, or that was definitely key to the midpoint reversal, or wow, look at me in the ordinary world. I was so naive, worrying about keeping my job when a tsunami was about to hit the country, for example. So this is why your journals are so important to the writing process if you want to write a book. And just to show you an example, this is one of the journals that I kept before I started writing A Letter from Paris and pitching it. And when I went back through that, when I started writing the book proposal and the sample chapters, I had whole chunks that I could just highlight and then start in my fresh document, and I already had material there. And because I'd written it in such a relaxed state in my morning journals, before I'd spoken to anyone, in complete solitude, feeling very relaxed, so I wasn't, putting pressure on myself and considering an audience, it ended up being very good material that I could use. So that's my number one strategy or achievable thing that you can have in place if you want to write your book in 2021, is to keep a daily journal and think of it as a daily writing practice. Don't think of it as writing a book. So that's one of my favorite writing tips, is to keep a journal. It's not just my favorite writing tip, but I think that it's more important than people realize. You don't become a writer by being published, you become a writer by writing. And what's the point of any of it if you don't enjoy it? And if you have a daily writing practice that you enjoy, it doesn't even matter whether or not you do get published, whether or not you do finish this book, you are a writer. So you can consider that you have recorded your experiences, you've figured out what they mean to you, you've assigned meaning to them, which is one of the most powerful aspects of memoir that I talk about in my courses. It is such a powerful psychotherapeutic process, because you are creating meaning from the events in your life and through this reflective daily writing. And that is one of the most powerful self-growth things that you can do. A lot of people don't reflect on their experiences or their decisions or their choices, and they don't learn from them. So there's so many benefits to keeping a memoir journal that have nothing to do with being published. So I hope that's helped you. That's my one thing that you need to have in place for 2021. It's achievable, it's doable, and it's enjoyable. Just go and get yourself a journal and a pen, set the alarm half an hour earlier, and start writing. And if you don't have the right guidance or the right prompts, I have a memoir journaling program that I'm going to be putting on a flash sale on Friday. So you're very welcome to sign up for my emails, and I'll send you all the details of that. And it's basically the prompts and the daily self-reflection tools that I've used for over 20 years for my daily journaling practice. Okay, I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you all soon.